These are the most dangerous aspects of human praise, which start to strike and threaten the world with the deadly weapons. And under the unbearable pressure to turn nuclear warheads, they can wipe out countries. During the entirety of World War II, 5 megaton explosives were used. These are Trident missiles, which can carry 12 nuclear warheads, and even a single missile contains 5 megatons of explosive material. A submarine can carry 24 Trident missiles. In our entire history, no weapon has been developed these submarines. People have no idea what we humans have created. Submarines are meant to be unseen, meaning their purpose is to remain undetected. No one can see them. Through submarines, you exert a kind of psychological pressure on them, because they can be anywhere at any time without anyone knowing. Like, you might be enjoying yourself in the sea, unaware that there could be a 48,000-ton nuclear submarine beneath you. With the press of a button, it can cause more destruction than a storm. But how did we get here? How did this submarine event happen? How can a submarine stay so deep underwater for 3 to 4 months? And most importantly, why am I saying that these submarines are the most dangerous things in human history? Let's find out the answers to these questions in this video by WorldWrapTV. We humans have always been searching for ways to go underwater. This is a very old picture of Alexander the Great, in which he is going underwater in a large glass barrel. This was around 2,000 years ago. Then, 1,800 years later, Leonardo da Vinci made a sketch of an underwater boat. The interesting thing is that Leonardo kept all such sketches a big secret because he feared that humans would use these ships to harm one another. Then, 1,700 years later, in 1750, a Dutch scientist made a boat that could go underwater, which looked something like this. It was called the Turtle Boat, and it was the first submarine in human history. The Dutch tried to use this boat against the British in their Freedom War, but it sank, and the whole experiment failed. However, in the 19th century, work on this idea sped up significantly. A German scientist, Rudolf Diesel, invented an engine that changed everything. This engine mixed air and fossil fuels to create pressure, which caused a small explosion and made things move. The Germans had the idea to use this engine in underwater boats, and then they could charge their batteries underwater through this process. Following this idea, German scientists invented the first modern submarine. These submarines were called U-boats, but they had one problem. The engines of these submarines needed air, and there was no such system underwater. Therefore, German submarines had to come to the surface every 48 hours to take in air. And as soon as they surfaced, they were detected, and the element of surprise was lost. But this problem was about to be solved. In the 20th century, after the Industrial Revolution, there was a technological boom. The world's superpowers were creating more and more dangerous weapons to destroy their enemies. It had been less than 20 years since the horrors of World War I, when another World War began. Millions of people were killed during World War II, which started in 1939, and the Western world was literally reduced to rubble. Germany lost World War II, and its U-boat submarines fell into the hands of the United States, the United Kingdom, and the Soviet Union. These 3 countries realized that they had acquired some incredible technology because it was clear that whoever wanted to rule the world now would have to control the seas. And this was the turning point. After that, these 3 countries began secretly investing billions of dollars in submarine technology. During this period, between the 1940s and 1950s, scientists had already discovered nuclear energy by splitting the atom. The special thing about this nuclear energy was that the entire nuclear process didn't require energy. In the 1950s, an idea occurred to an American Navy officer. If we can generate electricity through nuclear energy, and this entire process doesn't require air, then why not install nuclear reactors in submarines? This way, submarines wouldn't need to come to the surface every 2 days. He presented this idea to the American Navy. Because of the installation of nuclear reactors, submarines could now easily stay underwater for months. But simply staying underwater wasn't enough. Sonar could still detect submarines. Sonar is a technique that uses sound waves to detect objects in water. And at that time, all superpower countries had advanced to the point where they were using sonar technology. To counter this, submarines were coated with rubber tiles so that sonar signals wouldn't bounce off them. Large, silent mode engines were built so that no noise would be produced in the water. And inside the submarine, utmost care was taken to maintain silence. Everything inside the submarine is coated with rubber to prevent even the slightest noise. The people inside the submarine have no connection to the outside world. Every submariner is given an email address through which their family can send emails. However, every email is reviewed by top management before it is conveyed to the submarine. The reason for this is that they don't want to give any information that might lower the morale of the officers. For example, if a submariner's family member dies, the news is only given to them after their ship ends. And here, ships last 2 to 3 months. So, the duty of these submariners is very tough. Now, if we go back to the 1970s and 1980s, submarines were getting bigger. If we compare German U-boats with American submarines, the difference was significant. These submarines were much larger. If we look closely, we can see people here, a kitchen there, the nuclear reactor, and the area where the crew is. If you look closely, the crew is located near some tubes. These tubes contain nuclear missiles, which are launched through these tubes. A single American submarine carries enough nuclear missiles to destroy our entire planet. After explaining all this, if we now look at the actual purpose of submarines, it is retaliating to a nuclear strike. This means that if a country, let's say the United States, launches a nuclear attack on Russia, Russian submarines, hidden deep underwater in unknown locations, will survive the nuclear strike and retaliate by targeting the United States with nuclear missiles. These nuclear submarines don't even need permission from any government authority. So, if the United States launches a nuclear strike on Russia, Russian submarine commanders will retaliate with That's why submarines serve as a kind of psychological defense that prevents other countries from launching nuclear attacks on your country. This is why, despite having so many nuclear bombs, Russia and the United States don't attack each other. These submarines are the reason why nuclear war is being prevented. Currently, 6 countries possess nuclear submarines: the United States, the United Kingdom, France, India, Russia, and China. This is why these countries are military giants. Having nuclear weapons on land is powerful. Having nuclear weapons on jets is also powerful. But in both options, you can see these nuclear weapons and even target them. But when you have nuclear submarines silently roaming the seas, you gain a significant surprise advantage over your enemy. Another big advantage of submarines is that they are excellent for espionage. I'm sure you all know that all communication in the world right now happens because of underwater cables. Not just the internet, But military communication also relies on these underwater cables, which are so deep in the ocean that no one even thinks about going there, except submarines. In the 1970s, American intelligence agencies, in collaboration with the Navy, planned to locate and tap into Russian communication cables under the Pacific Ocean. A team of submariners was sent to this area, and they found a cable 120 meters below the ocean, connected to a Soviet naval base. The Americans placed a tape recorder on this cable, allowing them to listen to all communications. The Russians couldn't even imagine that anyone could do such a thing. The Americans executed this very smartly, but the only small problem was that the tapes filled up quickly. Divers had to go down every month to remove the old tapes and replace them with new ones. This process continued for about 8 to 9 months, and the entire Soviet naval strategy reached the Americans. Finally, an American intelligence agency agent sold this information to the Russians for $35,000, and the Russians caught the recorder. Even today, countries tap into underwater fiber optic cables. If you read the reports of ex-CIA contractor Edward Snowden, you'll find many such things. Anyway, if we go back to the question of how destructive the power of submarines is, let me explain with a demonstration. This is an O-class submarine, equipped with nuclear missiles. Each missile has cone-shaped warheads at the front. When a missile is launched from a submarine, it travels at full speed out of our Earth's atmosphere. Once there, the missile's engine shuts off, and the cone-shaped warheads separate from the missile and return to Earth, targeting different areas. It's hard to believe, but if you see this red dot here, it's because one warhead is dropped on one area. The O-class submarine contains 24 missiles, with 8 to 12 warheads on each missile. These warheads can target different areas simultaneously. It takes only 30 minutes for a missile to reach its target after launch. 30 minutes later, the warheads will separate from the missile and hit their respective targets, causing the same amount of destruction as 150 bombs, like those dropped on Hiroshima and Nagasaki. It's also important to note that one of these submarines weighs around 48,000 tons. For comparison, an aircraft carrier weighs around 80,000 tons. But the reason submarines are difficult to build is that they have to withstand extreme underwater pressure. In the 1980s, the Soviet Union created a class of submarines with titanium hulls. This is because titanium is stronger than steel. Because of this, Soviet submarines could dive up to 1,000 meters deep. But due to the high cost, the United States never built such submarines. After the dissolution of the Soviet Union, the United States claimed its superpower status. But we all know that China is now challenging the US in the 21st century. Interestingly, China has 79 submarines, more than the United States and Russia. In the coming years, China plans to increase this number to 110. The United States, on the other hand, is working on the new Columbia-class submarines. Their first nuclear submarine is set to be completed in 2027. These will be the most advanced nuclear submarines of the United States. Since these submarines have to patrol the seas for 30 years, the United States is investing billions of dollars in this program. The budget for this program alone is more than the entire annual military budget of many countries. All of this information explains why submarines are so terrifying and powerful. If the world were to go to war, only submarines would remain after all the countries were destroyed. That's why submarines are the most dangerous invention in human history. So friends, this was our episode on submarines. I hope you liked this video. If you did, please share it with your friends and subscribe to our channel, WorldWrapTV. Until next time, goodbye.